I would now like to introduce today's presenters. Rita Ansoni is Everest Group's Principal Analyst for Impact Sourcing and Sustainability. Her focus delivers a triple bottom line lens of people, planet, and profits to global services market research, beginning with an in-depth examination into impact sourcing. Aishwarya Barjatia is a practice director on the Business Process Services team and manages Everest Group's customer experience management outsourcing offerings. She is also an ESG fellow and actively tracks the impact sourcing space. Soilish Hota is a practice director within the Business Process Services team and manages Everest Group's talent acquisition research offerings. He is also currently a sustainability fellow and is responsible for deepening Everest Group's ESG research initiatives. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Rita.
Thank you so much, Agnes. Welcome, everyone. Just like we like to start many of our events, I'd love to hear from all of you where you're dialing in from, what you're hoping to get out of this event. I know when I looked through the pre-registrations, I was really excited at both seeing familiar faces and names, but also a lot of new ones. So please do let us know where you're dialing in from and what you're expecting. Just to get us started, want to level set. I know a lot of those folks that are out there that work on impact sourcing and have been talking about it for a long time don't necessarily like talking too much about this topic, but we have a very simple definition of what we call impact sourcing. And it is really an inclusive talent strategy that is both intentional and looking forward into communities that are typically excluded. We've, just like we've done in the past, we've shared some targeted groups that we've worked with and worked with, but unfortunately, as we know, the way the world works, it's not an exhaustive list. People keep getting excluded and included in different ways. So, economically disadvantaged groups, socially marginalized, under and unemployed groups, and a smattering of many other groups that are coming up. With that level setting, really the other piece of level setting I wanted to do for our team here is to get into who's working on impact sourcing. So there's actually a very meaningful collaboration happening among impact sourcing stakeholder groups. We have those that are employing the impact workers, be it specialists or traditional providers, even GBS operations oftentimes. We have a whole host of enablers. And then obviously we don't want to leave out the most important stakeholder group, which is the impact workers themselves. And actually, Sailesh, when he joined us as a sustainability fellow, because of his work in his regular practice, we actually expanded one of those enabler groups. Sailesh, do you want to have a word on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Rita. It's impressive how, as Rita mentioned, a lot of the stakeholders across the spectrum are coming together, right? And in recent history, based on our conversations, we are seeing actually a lot of the staffing and recruitment service providers take an active interest in running impact sourcing programs themselves, as well as help all of their clients across countries as well as globally in very targeted impact sourcing programs which span across a lot of target groups, right? So we are seeing a lot of programs that focus on neurodivergent folks. We are seeing programs that focus on veteran hiring. We are seeing a slow emergence on second chance hiring as well in the US, and that's really I would say empowering, as well as it gives us a great we are seeing a great evolution in the industry as well, right? Apart from that, we are also seeing similar interest on the employer of record services, right? So a lot of the global major EOR providers, such as some of the ones that are mentioned here, they are also starting to explore how they can actually support their clients better in fulfilling those, sustainability goals and ESG targets. And we are seeing a lot of these major providers starting to propagate the business case of leveraging EOR services to employ talent in these untapped communities in various regions across Africa and Southeast Asia. So yeah, I think exciting things to come, from these new stakeholder groups, all in all.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what's really interesting is that even within these groups, we're seeing some that are specializing in that work, as well as, this work from anywhere, really promoting the fact that we can do impact sourcing and delivery from anywhere. So I think these are exciting times, and that expansion is just going to help us grow. And I think, Milan just commented on the CGI pledge that we made. This is how we're going to make it, Milan, in case you don't know. All of these different entities are going to help us make that target. So moving on, and really not wanting to spend too much time on like this level setting activity, I do want to take a moment to say we talk very specifically about impact sourcing specialists versus traditional providers. On the bottom of this screen, you can see that there's obviously many themes that are consistent across both groups, because in the end, they are delivering to their clients. So, we don't want to emphasize the differences too much, but I think it is important to understand that there are two different kinds of companies that we're talking about when we're talking about delivering impact sourcing. Many of the impact sourcing specialists are smaller in size and have started their journey with a focus on targeting particular excluded communities. So their primary talent strategy is impact sourcing. Traditional providers have been delivering services for a good amount of time, but they're seeing this intentional inclusive talent strategy as an opportunity, and have begun to include that into their talent strategy. So this distinction is important as we talk about things and as we use language in this presentation. So with all of that background, and with all of you on board, almost 100 people dialing in, we want to dive straight into a poll, because we want to know who's in the audience. Are you an impact sourcing employer, a specialist employer, a traditional service provider? Are you enabling impact sourcing through your nonprofit organization or certification bodies? Are you recruitment? As Sailesh brought in the new recruitment organizations, the EORs. Are you an enterprise that is looking to buy impact sourcing services, or you're looking to incorporate impact sourcing into your GBS? And if we've not captured everyone, please do share in chat if you're an other. Yeah, so Aishwarya, what do you think of we're starting to see some numbers coming in, and for some reason, I think some folks are being a little shy on putting their answers in, but what do you think so far?
Yeah, absolutely, Rita. I'm very excited to see the results and understanding who our audience is for the webinar today. And it's great because the ecosystem, as Sailesh mentioned, the ecosystem was already there, and it's now just growing ever more. So I think it's really interesting to see the different facets of the ecosystem, and if they're present here with us today as well, that's really interesting to see.
And you know that you really hit something interesting when suddenly you start getting the attention of consultants. So we're really excited for those that have answered in the other section and letting us know who they are. And at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Aishwarya, who's going to take us through key market trends and what service providers are doing as far as practices.
Thanks, Rita. Moving to the biggest question of all, which is, what is the impact sourcing size currently? And while this is based on our research, if you see the numbers on the left, you will see that the size is healthy and growing in a very healthy manner as well. We had a CAGR of about 11 to 15% over the past 2 years. And the current number in 2023 is expected to be around 420 to 450,000 impact workers that we have tracked across more than 20 providers. And when I say providers, I mean both traditional service providers as well as specialists in the space. What's really interesting to see is that specialists, while they are, as the name suggests, they specialize in hiring only impact workers. The distribution of impact workers across both these groups is about 10 to 12% in the specialist cohort and the rest in the traditional service provider cohort. While that might sound counterintuitive, because why aren't specialists having more impact workers? The truth is that specialists choose to focus on developing the communities or the society in maybe a particular region, a particular country, or maybe a few countries at a time. And therefore, they are smaller providers which have smaller scale compared to some of the traditional service providers, such as a Teleperformance or a Sutherland in the BPS space, that are huge providers with global footprints and worldwide scale, which actually enables them to hire impact workers across locations and therefore have a much larger impact sourcing program. Having said that, what's really interesting to see is that specialists grew at over 100% in 2022 in terms of revenues over the 2021 revenues. And that just goes to show the growing recognition of impact sourcing, as well as growing importance within the worldwide business community as well of hiring impact workers. So that's a good sign for the times to come as well in the impact sourcing industry.
I love that, Aishwarya. I think that, indicating what's special about both groups is super important. I also want to highlight in this chart that we see for the 2023 estimate that we are really within striking distance of meeting the commitment that we made at the Clinton Global Initiative. We had planned on a 3-year timeframe in which we would meet that target, which would be next year. But it looks like, I think in 2024, we are going to reach that target and maybe need to renew that target and put something even bigger and better out there.
Absolutely. Really excited to hit that number before time, Rita. So moving on, this is also a really interesting insight that we wanted to portray. What's really interesting, and maybe it's a little obvious as well, that the women in the impact sourcing workforce actually form the largest cohort within the impact sourcing talent pool. And according to our research, almost 60% of the impact sourcing pool is actually made up of women among the economically disadvantaged group, and that they actually form the biggest part in the impact sourcing workforce. That's actually not surprising, keeping in mind the diversity mandates or the hiring mandates that many firms have put out, and in favor of hiring more women in their teams as well as in the leadership roles. We're actually seeing that change, and this is true for the impact sourcing industry as well. What's really interesting is that groups with unique employability factors, such as maybe veterans or rural or small town residents, as well as migrants and refugees, they are also a big part of the impact sourcing workforce and are being hired by many firms, specifically targeting hiring of these groups such as Teleperformance and Sigma Connected, which specialize in hiring people returning after a long career break, returning back to work. In the underemployed or the unemployed groups, one of the things that stand out is the hiring of older adults. I think it's really important in this day and age to recognize that with lifespans increasing, the retirement age is something that needs to be probably thought through by all the countries in the world. And we should probably pay more attention to the silver economy that's very capable of actually producing results even if they're past a certain age. And age is just a number, right? We all say that. So that's a really interesting factor, and they form a big part of the underemployed or unemployed groups. Talking about the chart that you see on your right, which is of the age groups of impact sourcing workers, what's really interesting to note is that majority of impact sourcing workers, more than 2/3 of them, are less than 30 years old. So they are young kids, or people who've just graduated school or probably just attended universities, and they're really starting out into the world and trying to make a family and make something of themselves. So it's really interesting to see that that is the cohort that is the biggest in the impact sourcing space. Just one more thing I'd like to add is that uh, what we see is that women form a large part of this cohort as well. And what's really interesting is that if they say that if you educate a woman, you educate a family. Similarly, if the woman in the family is working, it really contributes and has a lot of positive domino effects on the society as well. And therefore, that's something really interesting, because when we spoke to B2R Technologies, which is an impact sourcing provider in Uttarakhand in India, they have a rural BPO model. They only employ people in the rural villages of Uttarakhand. From the time they started operations in about 2008, if I'm not wrong, in the 14 years that they've been operating, they have actually the age of marriage of women in that area has actually increased from 17 or 18 years old to 23, 24 years old. And that's a fantastic achievement. And we're really happy that impact sourcing has actually yielded benefits to the community, to the women in those areas. And if you go on their website and see the testimonials and the videos that are there, the women have actually really transformed their lives and really rediscovered their passion for living, for their family, for being able to contribute to their family. So it's really great to see that. Sailesh, I believe you also had an example to add here.
Yeah, among all of these, stakeholder groups, one great example, or one great, I would say, trend that came out while we were doing this research was that when we talk about these young adults, right, it's great to see some of these impact sourcing providers actually design the employee life cycle in a manner that progresses their ambitions and aspirations, right? So when we're talking about folks who are high school graduates and are actually looking for employment to sort of support their further education, our friends at Isahi and even Sigma Connected, they are actually creating these programs in a way that an individual can work there for, let's say, 2 to 4 years, which gives them a sizable chunk of real world experience, while also helping them create a financial cushion that helps it helps them to get further education, be it a bachelor's degree, be it master's degree, whatever it is. It's very empowering to see how these key stakeholder groups are working with these young adults and provide and giving them the power, right? So I just wanted to give a shout out to this trend that we came across last year, and the good work that all the folks are doing.
Awesome. Now for some numbers, because we're analysts, we love numbers. What is really interesting here, and is again something that we keep on harping about, is the business benefit of actually impact sourcing and hiring impact sourcing workers. What you see here is that impact workers have much lower attrition than non-impact workers, and that's because of a variety of factors, but I like to point out probably two. They are really committed to the employment that they have received because of the circumstances that they might be coming from, because of lack of opportunities in the areas that they live in. And they have also, and that is why they really have a lot of gratitude to the employment and the employer. And therefore, that really results in a lot of loyalty. And we see that they are much more engaged, much more happy, much more committed to the job. And therefore, the retention rate is much higher as well compared to non-impact workers. Some of the providers we spoke to said that the tenure difference between impact workers and non-impact workers is almost 3 times. So there's the business benefit is evident there, that because of lower attrition, they're also having lower business operational costs, because of course the cost of retraining agents who leave again and again, that's obviously saved. So that's a great business benefit, and it's a win-win for the industry. And that's why we say that impact sourcing should be one of the talent imperatives within every organization in the services industry. Rita, anything you want to add here?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, I think we got a lot of interesting questions as folks were registering. And we did get a question about, well, are you still facing this challenge of impact sourcing being seen more as a optional or a charitable activity? And I think the answer to that is right in front of you in this slide in particular. I think we've seen this impact the attrition rates as being lower. We've also seen quality being higher, et cetera, et cetera. So the business case that we made back in 2014 is actually still the same business case. So definitely not charity, good for business.
Great. And another thing I want to highlight on this particular slide is that because it's not just that agents probably come in, they're young and they get a few years of experience, and then they leave probably for other avenues. What we've also seen from many service providers is that because they are so loyal to the company, they are committed, they get a chance to contribute to their family, to their communities in a positive manner. Many of them are retained. They continue to do well in their jobs, and they do so well that they actually reach the management positions within their own companies. So that's really great as well, because impact sourcing is a great way to actually have very good career progression if the right talent is there and the right fit is there. And we see that they actually contribute very positively to the employer as well, or to the provider firm that they are with. And they rise up the ranks, and they do really well for themselves and for the employer. All right. Next, we have another poll for you. What key challenges does your organization face in improving or maybe establishing your impact sourcing program? And it could be around identifying the right sourcing challenges, leadership buy-in, lack of support from the leadership, or lack of appropriate organizational policies that might not be existing currently, availability of talent with the right skills, or the time needed to train or upskill them, if you feel that's a deterrent to improving or expanding your impact sourcing program.
Yeah, in our conversations last year, right, we saw actually, all stakeholders going through most of these, right? So everybody had a mixed bag of challenges. It wasn't a particular thing that people were getting stuck on, right? So as stakeholders are navigating this sort of avenue, we do also understand that they need more support, and they are also reinventing the process in some places. But yeah, I'm very happy to see the number of responses trickling in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alish. And some of the things that you've pointed out are some of the concerns that we are facing as well. And that's around identifying the right talent sourcing channels. Most of you have said that's your number one concern, along with availability of talent with the right skills or the necessary skills needed to work in your firm. So I think that's really interesting, and that resonates with what we're seeing in the market as well. Rita, would you like to highlight some of the and actually I think the next slide really answers some of these questions here, because what we're seeing is that with the right kind of partnerships and the right kind of support, you can actually mitigate or solve for all of the challenges that you were facing and that you've shared that you're facing as well. So for example, we have some examples here, but what I'd like to focus on is that many providers such as EXL, such as Ignition Group, such as ISON Experience, Performance, etc., what they've done is they've really kind of had either local partnerships with local organizations who are probably invested in training the youth who might not have the right skills, or having global or government partnerships with the government agencies that can actually help with unemployment and decreasing the unemployment rate in their communities, or actually having partnerships with recruitment and workforce development providers. For example, ISON Experiences had partners with the Institute for Deaf and Dumb in Egypt, as well as Connectus, that actually partners with the Turkish Agency for Immigration. And there are many other examples as well. Won't go through all of them in detail, but I hope you get the picture that what many providers are doing as well is really taking help from local agencies, local government bodies, recruitment providers, as well as NPOs and NGOs that operate in the region to get access to the right talent, to train that talent, and then to finally hire that talent into that talent. Rita,
Yeah,
you
and
look like you want to add something.
yes, I definitely do. No, I think you gave an amazing overview, and I feel like this slide actually answers all the challenges that folks saw that highlighted in the previous poll. And also during pre-registration, we got a question about government mandated accreditation for making sure that impact sourcing is being delivered correctly. And this is where I wanted to sort of give a heads up or a shout out to BPESA. They're a really interesting player based in South Africa that have been able to work with the government and get concessions for incorporating impact sourcing into their programs, and then eventually go actually to the other extreme of actually mandating that certain percentages of your workforce need to be impact workers. That said, what we find as far as accreditations is that there's nothing particularly government mandated, but we do see that there are several really useful voluntary accreditations, and a pretty wide range of them, actually, ranging from ISO certification. So there's an ISO 26000 certification. There's the B Corp certification, which is pretty extensive and evaluates your entire business, all of your business practices. There was also a certification that was created by the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition through BSR. And then there's a slew of ESG reporting norms that you can also include the work that you're doing from an impact sourcing practices perspective.
Right. And actually, there's a really interesting question from Stephen Frick in the chat, Rita. And he asks about, what is the best practice or what are the trends in the ICT sector when it comes to impact sourcing? So, Stefan, thanks for the question. And I'd like to say that it would be great if you download our complimentary report as well that has all the details around this. But to answer your question, technology or telecom and media is actually the second biggest industry that employs impact sourcing workers across various roles, customer service, BPS, as well as ITS roles, software development, AI, ML services, etc. So that's actually, apart from technology, which is the biggest, telecom and media is actually the second biggest industry, followed by BFS and retail industries. So thanks for the question, and I hope that helps.
Yes, I also want to point out to folks, we've kept the chat open so that you can talk to each other as well as share some of your insights. But for questions, we do encourage you to use the Q&A tab for questions.
Right, absolutely. Coming to the training that impact sourcing workers receive, and this is different to the training that any other non-impact worker might receive when they join either a BPO or a call center or anything in the services industry. And why that is because sometimes they might not have access to a lot of higher education or a lot of social benefits as well, and therefore they might come from a disadvantaged background, which is why not just functional training, but they're also given a lot of personal development and holistic well-being training as well when they start on their corporate or on their employment journey. What we see here is that they're given person development training such as business communication, financial literacy, computer literacy, etc. Work readiness training, which actually talks about teamwork and how can they actually interview for the different roles that are available, and have general leadership and management training as well, if they're at that role. And they also have, like other non-impact workers as well, then they're given client-specific training, tool-specific training, platform and technology-specific training as well, such as maybe AI, ML if they're doing that role, software development, or working on different tools of Microsoft Office, and those kind of trainings. For client-specific training, if there is an industry overview to be given, or specific empathy training or a speech or vernacular training as well. Those kinds of things are also imparted to agents or impact workers. All right. And really interesting trend here that we've seen is that sometimes this training is given free of cost to impact workers. And actually, if some of them do well, then they are actually hired. So they are probably taken on a trainership or a learnership basis. They're given this training for 4 to 12 weeks or 12 to 16 weeks overall. And then if they do well in that training, they're given certifications, they're given employment offers, and that can actually lead to greater income for them as well. So that's something that we learned along the way when we were doing our research. Talking about many tools and technologies that I just spoke about that actually help impact workers do their job better. We have highlighted some of them here, but Sailesh, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, as we have highlighted here, the two broad categories that we see are obviously learning management solutions and agent assistance tools, right? Let me just quickly start with the learning management solutions. So there are these five broad categories of investment, right? One is knowledge library, where we see digital repositories being created which store and organize all resources, articles, documents, videos, or any material, right, so that it can be assessed online to facilitate learning, research, and in general information retrieval. That's followed by performance management solutions or platforms. So these platforms aid in improving the overall employee performance. They offer tools for goal setting, progress tracking, feedback and development, and they also enable data-driven insights for decision making on the employee as well as the employer side. We are also seeing simulation exercises being popular. So these are essentially training activities that replicate real world scenarios for participants to practice, learn, and along the way develop skills in a controlled environment. And especially in some of the roles which are client facing, these simulation exercises become a great sort of resource to make sure that your impact workers are client ready before you deploy them. The next is live coaching. So live coaching in agent training is real time on the job guidance and feedback provided to an agent. This feedback is provided during customer interactions, and the aim is to improve performance and service quality overall. The last area is gamification, where I mean, most of the providers want to ensure that the learning experience is engaging as well as motivating for all impact workers. So a lot of gamification platforms are being used, which offer rewards, badges, and leaderboards to encourage participation and to help workers reach their learning goals.
And talking about agent assistance tools, which providers also deploy so that their agents can, offer the best service quality to the end customer, or perform the best that they can at their job. We see a lot of agent assistant tools as well coming into play, such as next best action recommendation or sentiment analysis, in which sentiment of the customer is identified in real time through their tone, their mood, their tonality, and other things that they are saying, which are verbal or non-verbal cues. And they're actually used to then share the next best action that the agent should then share with the customer depending on their mood and whether or not they are open for sale, or open for pitching, cross selling, upselling, open for any discounts that they might need, etc. So all of these things are then shared with the agent in real time, which help the agents do their job better. Then there are also solutions for accent neutralization and language translation, so that impact workers, especially, we see that they are spread across all over the world, actually, but specifically in areas such as some of the offshore areas that we call them, such as the Philippines, India, some places in Africa, etc., when they can actually sit there and still kind of do their job and deliver the great service quality through language translation tools in real time, as well as some accent neutralization tools for better clarity. Lastly, there are some co-browsing tools as well, through which, and this is mostly used in technical support services, in which they can co-browse, kind of look at the customer's screen, take control of the screen, and troubleshoot and help the customer. And lastly, virtual assistants, which, of course, the world is going the automation and the Gen AI way. And we see that a lot of questions or, inquiries that come in through a call center are actually now being taken care of by chatbots or through virtual assistants or through automation as well, or FAQs. So those are some of the agent assistance tools at Impact Workers' disposal. And I believe we have another poll. Rita, do you want to take this?
Yes. So as we prep to get more onto the buyer side of what is being looked for from impact sourcing, we want to know what your opinions are on what factors are driving enterprises to ask for impact sourcing. And I think, Sailesh, what do you think of these options? I mean, I hope we've covered them all, but we might see something in other at this point.
I'm hoping that, but the top three seem to be telling a pretty familiar story, right? I think cost and the sort of corporate citizenship are definitely coming out on top of this leaderboard. But it's also interesting to see some folks opting for other challenges as well. Um, so yeah, great to see that they are considering impact sourcing as expansion strategy into emerging markets, and it's great to see that they're also leveraging for geographic diversification.
Yeah, and I think that actually gets to Stephen's question earlier about expanding into other markets. So yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising that finally impact sourcing is being slated into achieving sustainability goals. It's a good thing. It's not that sustainability and ESG are only the E of ESG. So I think that's a positive fact. But yes, access to talent is kind of a reality now. We had the Great Resignation and then too much talent and all these ups and downs. But in the end of the day, we do recognize globally that there's a demographic challenge in most geographies. So I think these are great answers and even more justification for doing impact sourcing. With that, Sailesh, I'd love for you to get into really understanding what the buyers need and how impact sourcing specialists and traditional providers can meet those.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if let me kick right off, and no surprises here, right? These were the top three options that came on top. And yes, at the end of the day, buyers prioritize impact sourcing primarily for these three factors, right? Then they like the business edge that comes along with cost savings, reliable delivery, and improved brand equity. They love the corporate citizenship that this impact sourcing channel provides them. And obviously in these trying times, they definitely love the talent advantage that is coming along with this. But when we dig deeper, right, there's a lot of parameters we actually took feedback on from buyers, right? So in most cases, if you see, it's actually very heartening to see that on most of the key parameters, the buyer expectations are being sort of exceeded, right? So in most cases we are seeing 70% plus scores where buyers have rated these parameters at above expectations. But a couple of areas where there's definite room to play and improve is domain expertise, right? So this is where the skilling piece and the training piece becomes more and more critical, right? And after that, I think the talent management it can definitely be improved, right? And that also stems from the maturity phase of some of these programs. Not all programs are created equal. So as some of these programs scale up and further mature, we hope that these talent management issues also get fixed along the way. The three key challenges that came out overall when we look at the entire buyer set we interviewed were obviously service quality consistency, which stemmed a little bit from the domain expertise piece, the scalability and flexibility of operations, and third was, as you just talked, talent sourcing and performance management.
And before you move ahead, Sailesh, just an interesting anecdote I wanted to share was that I was talking with an enterprise on impact sourcing, sustainability, and how they can actually incorporate it in their portfolio. And they asked me a really interesting question. They said, why should we do impact sourcing? So should we not donate to 3 schools in Ghana, or should we do impact sourcing? What's your take on that? And I found that to be a really interesting question because as Rita had mentioned earlier as well, some people still think that impact sourcing might be more for charitable purposes rather than getting business benefit out of it. But Sailesh, as you just mentioned, business benefit is the number one thing that enterprises or providers experience when they actually hire impact workers. So it's good to see that some of this data is actually validating our hypothesis while at the same time correcting some misconceptions that are out there.
Absolutely. And, all of this also sounds good in theory to most people. And one frequent question we keep hearing is that is impact sourcing actually being successful? And voila, we have a case study, right? So one of the case studies we had this year was a large US-based firm who wanted to improve their overall identity verification process. The solution was that the impact sourcing specialists they collaborated with, they sort of brought in-house technical capabilities to develop an AI algorithm to capture, extract, and analyze and make decisions on the identity data. And as a result, they generated 600 plus new jobs. They increased their accuracy from 88 to 98%. The handling time went down by 55%. And, I mean, at the end of the day, they attained the entire sort of security standards in 6 weeks and achieved real-time sort of 24/7 identity verification is in just under 2 minutes per identity, right? Yeah, we also have, another case study, but in the interest of time, we'll definitely skip it, and please feel free to browse it later. We have the same case studies in the report as well. Rita, over to you.
Before we proceed further into our conversation, I wanted to make sure that those that are on our webinar have this special offer. As many of you know, Everest Group is prioritizing sustainability, and we're prioritizing it across all of our research practices. And it's really about helping businesses make better decisions and grow with purpose. This is our triple bottom line framework that we're looking at. So this offer is a complimentary download of the impact sourcing state of the market. I think you should see in chat a link to that report. Please read it, give us some feedback, share your thoughts and experiences with this. And if you're not participating in this research already, please start, because we've got this bigger, broader agenda. We mentioned the Clinton Global Initiative, the pledge that we've made there. But in general, it's about using this industry to make a bigger dent in the challenges that are there from a sustainability perspective. So encouraging that. And on that note, what we've done actually on our reports portal, which this will take you to, is we actually have a special section, Hot Topics, where we're talking about all the different things that we're doing under sustainability. So check that out, get a better sense of what it is that we're doing from a sustainability standpoint, and ask us really hard questions so that we can start helping solve them. So with that, I think we have our final poll of the day. Sorry, we're making our participants actively participate this time. So we really want to know how it is that you're going to be expanding impact sourcing. And what are the factors that are affecting your expansion of your program? So we do realize that there's a lot of uncertainty this year. We know there's 60 national level elections that are happening across the globe. The economy seems to be improving, but there still seems to be a lot of uncertainty around that. geopolitical conflict we've talked about in many of our webinars and the effects of that. So tell us what you're thinking about in terms of how is it that you, what are the constraints in expanding on this? And Sailesh, I think we're getting folks to participate faster these days. So what do you think of our results so far? I think we can actually close this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's in the same boat. And as we move to the next section, I think, it will also validate a similar thing. So in our discussion this year, actually, right, the first thing that came out, which, it's not on the top right now, but the impact of Gen AI and LLMs were felt, right? And I would invite Aishwarya to kick us off with what's happening on the Gen AI front.
Thanks, Elish. So I think most of our audience in the services industry especially know that Gen AI is the only thing that everyone's now talking about and interested to talk about as well. So, of course, while some of these use cases are there that Gen AI is expected to really bring in and really transform the entire services industry, make it much more simpler for agents to handle inquiries in terms of, and also help with content generation and a lot of other things. What are some things that we think that will actually help impact workers? Is that there will be a lot more content generation, personalization, which will actually help workers really deliver to their end customers in a very seamless fashion, as well as do it in real time much more quickly, and that will actually enhance their performance. Global market reach and cost reduction. While Gen AI is really expensive right now, we think that once the technology really scales, it will actually lead to a lot of cost reduction because it will eliminate a lot of the transactional jobs that transactional roles that might be out there right now, and it will also really help with the faster resolution of queries and a lot of other things. And because of the global reach, it will also help impact workers globally, being able to deliver better experiences for their customers. Of course, if we talk about internal facing Gen AI use cases, we already see many service providers in both the BPS and ITS space really employing Gen AI into their internal operations, be it for their LMS systems, their learning systems, be it in their agent assistance tools, be it in their HR or ops systems as well. We see, in fact, Everest Group also has an internal Gen AI chatbot that we use for solving our queries internally. So it's really interesting that this is now probably going to take hold globally, and we're just waiting to see how this will impact talent in a much more positive manner and enhance their productivity, along with automating routine tasks and, of course, sharing better customer insights, because all the analysis is happening in real time, be it sentiment analysis or, customer sifting through the customer history, trying to understand what would be the best offer or action that would entail them to make the right decision. So that's some of the impact. And yeah, Sailesh, over to you.
Yeah, and all of this does not come without its share of challenges, right? So we have highlighted the key challenges, and I think this is going to be familiar to most of you, right? We are seeing limited budgets and lack of resources. We are seeing massive hurdles in terms of data and regulatory laws. The landscape in terms of regulation is changing very fast, and a lot of people are in wait and watch mode. There's challenges around scalability and integration. Especially a lot of the, let's say, pilots, when they start moving into production, we do see integration challenges with the existing systems and processes. But then there's concerns around the ethics and the competitiveness coming from generative AI with significant workflow and process changes, and a lot of effective change management being needed. And the last is the entire piece around change management and training, where the concern is that how do all of you keep up with larger competitors in the AI adoption space, and that seems like a daunting task for most providers.
Rita and
Sorry.
Sailesh, actually, quick question. We receive a lot of questions on will Gen AI take away a few jobs, and how will that impact workers? Is that a negative for the industry? So, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and I'm always happy when the question gets asked because they are looking at the ethical concerns of Gen AI. But what we've seen so far is that it has been much more about enhancing the employee experience as opposed to completely eliminating. And then I think the other side of the coin is that newer jobs, different jobs are getting created along the way. And many of those are not necessarily requiring, the same deep technical expertise because of the tools within Gen AI. So I think it's been really interesting. There was a firm I recently met that's headquartered in India, has big operations in the United States, and they just opened in a small town in Mexico one of their centers, and specifically focusing on the IT side of Gen AI and figuring that out. So understanding that many of these tools are actually helping you to develop talent in addition to making talents and making the employee's experience better.
Yeah, and one small example was, in I think in a annotation services provider, data annotation service provider, the clear example they said was that, even though we are leveraging generative AI, not a single output or not a single file goes out without human intervention. So at the end, we are just making our employees more efficient, right? And that is, a great attitude, and a great way to look at how generative AI can be actually a enabler to your entire operation.
Even though we're getting close to the end of our webinar and our slides, please do put questions in the Q&A tab if there's anything that hasn't been clear or you want some deeper insight. If we don't get to it during the webinar, we will follow up with you on this. So just wanted to do a shout out for Q&A.
Yeah. And the second, set of challenges is what came up very evidently in the poll that all of you responded to. So, this year has been particularly challenging. 2023 has been particularly challenging for a lot of service providers with rising economic uncertainty, with, rising cost pressures, slowing demand, and heightened competition and budget constraints, right? So, we were a little sad to see tough times hit a couple of key specialists and stakeholders that we worked with. So Bitwise recently filed for bankruptcy, and Dignify ceased its operations. So we did see softening of the market in 2023, but we are hoping that 2024, especially in H2, the market recovers well, and the story and the growth and the momentum continue. But we do not want to end on a sad note, right? So in these challenging times, most service providers are actually focusing on expanding their programs through a lot of various avenues, right? And we see a lot of focus on training, advocacy, technology, and reporting, and we have highlighted a few examples here as well. But seeing that we have only 5 minutes left, I think it would be best to just let this we'll share this across, and obviously all of you who are downloading the report will have access to this. But I think it would be a good place, Rita, to move to Q&A. Yeah. Rita, you're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you. Had to happen once. Before we get into the Q&A, and I'm glad to see some folks are starting to ask questions, I do want to make one more interesting announcement about what we're doing at Everest Group. And if we go to the next page, we've recently launched our first ever events platform. And so we will be having our first major event in Dallas in the fall, this coming fall. And we're really excited. We think that this is going to be an opportunity for us to have deeper conversations about the things that matter to both in the tech and tech services sector. So please do stay informed and stay engaged on this event that's coming up. Do let us know if you're interested in being part of that. My colleagues are doing some really incredible work there. So getting to the Q&A, we've been asked by Venkat about transactional jobs being cheaper compared to Gen AI costs that are high. How does the cost benefit analysis scale up? I think we have a finger happy thing there. Ashwarya, do you want to share an answer on that one?
Yes, actually, Rita, I was just typing it out while you spoke about it. So, yeah, actually, I'd love to share the answer because what we are actually seeing in the market is that while Gen AI cost is really high right now, we expect that with the maturing of the technology, when some pilots actually go into production, we actually see some ROI coming up. We expect that there's so much innovation already happening in the Gen AI space. There is a Karya, which is an Indian startup, which is working on multiple Indian languages and developing LLMs in those languages. So what we're saying is that while there's a lot of innovation happening in the space, we do expect that with scaling of the technology and with actual ROI that we see coming in, the cost will eventually scale down a little bit. Of course, transactional jobs are cheaper. And what we're also seeing is that traditionally, all technologies, advanced economies such as and more mature outsourcing destinations such as the US or Western Europe or the UK, those are some of the places where Gen AI will take a lot more stronghold than some of the other places in the world. And therefore, we think that uh, Gen AI as well as transactional roles, they will go hand in hand. While Gen AI will take away some of the transactional work, it will not completely kind of take away the agent as well. What they'll do is they'll enhance the agent's capacity to handle more different types of work. Therefore, and train the agent on different roles as well. So we'll actually see that agent performance go up or productivity go up while Gen AI will be like a co-pilot for the agent. That's what we think.
Great. Thank you, Ashwarya. With 1 minute left, I'm going to answer Dheeraj's question about comparative views. Dheeraj, I love the question because it really speaks to a lot of the expertise that's here at Everest Group. We do a lot of geographic analyses. We have a whole practice on global, on delivery by geography. And we're beginning to incorporate into that research impact sourcing in those geographies. So I encourage you to take a look at what we have on our reports portal and see more of that information. We also do events that are specifically tailored to particular geographies. So do keep an eye out for that. And if we can just, in the last second that we have here, go to the next 2 pages. I would like to say that I'm really excited about the fact that our research agenda in sustainability continues to grow, and we have a lot more interesting things to say. We do have a 2024 research agenda under impact sourcing, and can't wait to be sharing that with you. I really want to thank the Everest Group team that's put together this presentation. Sailesh and Ashwarya, you're amazing. And with that, I would like to thank Agnes and hand it back over to our Zoom administrator.